Hi, Jerry. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I see that you've written some interesting books, a series, the Ricky Burns Mysteries, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And we're here to talk about your latest one, Killer Camp. Well, before we start, though, you sound like a very interesting person. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your past, what you've done, and how you got to the point where you're writing these kind of books?
I started out, I was a cop in New York City in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I got promoted, became a detective, um, got promoted within the detective division, became a first grade detective where I was assigned to the major case unit. Before I did that, I was in a robbery squad where I just did robberies committed by a gun in Manhattan and the Bronx. I did all right there, and they promoted me to the major case unit where I started to do homicides, rapes, and other major crimes. I retired in 1994 after 20 years. While I was a cop, I was in two shootouts. Most aren't, as a detective, most aren't in any. I was lucky enough to be in two. And but then after 20 years, my son came to me and said, "Dad, you may not win the next one," and I retired.
Mm.
But I love doing investigations, so I became a private investigator. I got lucky enough to get hooked up with a couple of great attorneys, probably the brightest criminal defense attorneys in America. And with that, I was able to work a couple of pretty interesting cases. At times now, I travel different areas of the country: California, Ohio, Colorado, Boston, and doing criminal investigations for attorneys.
Okay. And because of all this experience, I guess you got the idea that you're going to put some of these stories fictionally into a series.
Yeah, my kids told me for a long time, Dad, you should write a book. You should write a book. Other people, and I tell people I don't know how to spell, never mind
Hmm.
write. And so I met C.K. Lawrence. I read one of her books, which I thought was pretty good because I could give you the case. I don't know if I could give you like a story behind the case and stuff like that. And so I read one of her books. She doesn't live too far from me, so I contacted her. We met, and we decided we give this a shot together. So far, we've written three books, and we're writing the fourth one now.
Okay. I've always been curious how two people could write a book. It sounds to me that in your case, you've got the you've got the experience and the know-how of how these criminal activities take place and how they're solved and the intrigue behind it, but perhaps you need someone who could put it into words. Is that was that the relationship between you and
Pretty much,
Lawrence?
pretty much. But we started out with a book called Two in the Head, and it has to do with a football player. And CK has a history in football. She used to work for the University of Miami's um, football team. I don't know what she did. I know she didn't carry the ball or catch passes, but so she has a knowledge of football. So, and I had a case up in Boston about a football player who was accused of two murders. So we decided, with her knowledge of football and my knowledge of the case, we would start with that book.
These are fictional stories, not based on anything true.
Well, they're fiction based on true crimes. I tell people that it's true fiction, but
Okay.
it's fiction. I have to worry about attorney client stuff, and I have to worry about certain things. But the plot of the cases that I investigate, like the double murder in Boston, two in the head, that's two in the head.
Hmm.
Oh Baby is about a 2-year-old baby that went missing and was found dead in Orlando, Florida. And so I take the cases that I work, use that basically as a plot, and but with CK's help, we put a story behind it. So it's
Sure, sure.
it's true fiction.
Yeah, yeah. Getting back to what your son said to you before you retired, would you say that he and members of your family know you for being a good storyteller?
I'm afraid so. I'm afraid. My youngest daughter talks about my recycled jokes. but yeah, they think I'm a pretty good storyteller.
Yeah, that's where it all starts.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know how to spell, if you're a good storyteller,
That's right. When I'm talking to you, I don't have to spell nothing, do I?
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So when it got to just the last thing you said to me, uh, when I'm writing, I try my narrative to be as proper grammar as possible, but some of my characters, they don't speak all very good, you know.
Right.
They do double negatives and stuff. Did you allow some of that to get through in your books?
100%. You know, I don't speak proper English. I speak New York English,
Hmm.
and so with CK, she was also a school teacher, and she taught English. So when she's writing, it's all prim and proper. You know, everything is great. But then I tell her, because in the stories, the Ricky Burns mysteries, Ricky is me. All right. So she'll write something out, and I said, no, 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 no. Ricky wouldn't say it that way,
That's right.
or say another detective or another cop, he wouldn't talk that way. So I give a little bit of background, and we don't use the King's English,
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
and but we talk the way we talk,
Yeah,
and I talk
exactly.
like a New Yorker, and it's not always proper, prim and proper.
Sure, sure. Well, we know that Law and Order, that long-standing series and all the various versions that they've got are loosely based on things that actually happened, though they're not trying to, tell you this is literally what happened. But if you follow the news and you watch the episodes,
Right,
you can see the correlation for sure.
right.
That's kind of like what you've been doing.
That's kind of like what we do.
Excellent, excellent. Now let's talk about this book, Killer Camp. It sounds interesting. There's a silhouette of Florida, the rebel flag is behind there. What's all that about?
Well, it's a case that I have, where a woman was accused of killing another woman, supposedly shot her in the back of the head. She was found guilty at a trial. I visited her in prison, and she said, "Jerry, I didn't do it. I was set up." I've looked into the case, and you know what? If she did it, she couldn't have done it alone, and she was probably set up. But if she had nothing to do with it, she was set up. If she did it, she could not have done it alone. And the bottom line is the crime could not have happened the way the state said it did. And so I investigated the case, Killer Camp. It has to do with rednecks in Florida, right wing militia, and stuff like that. And that's basically the people who I investigated, and so that's why it's like that.
Mm,
And one of the guys had a hunting camp or a fishing camp, but there were other people there. So the book is based on that. And our hope is that we were able to show that the case could not have happened the way the state did, state says it did. And hopefully she will get a new trial. And if and then and part of the appeal is ineffective counsel. We were saying that the lawyers that she used the first time were ineffective. They weren't good enough, and they missed a lot of stuff. And in the book, it brings out a lot of stuff that they missed.
So I'm feeling two stories here. One is the real story, the true story that you personally investigated, and
Right.
then a fictionalized version of that. When you are fictionalizing it, are you taking you can take liberties and exaggerate situations just to make it more interesting, I suppose. Is that what you do?
Well, we probably do that a little, but when you're talking about something that really happened, you don't have to stretch it too far, to make it interesting.
Okay.
And this is a case about, like I said, a woman accused of a murder, a brutal murder, shooting another woman in the back of the head, then burying the body.
Hmm.
And a woman, be honest with you, they don't know where the crime scene was, so she was killed someplace else. This woman, who's only like 5 foot nothing, weighing nothing, and the other person was like 5'6", 5'7", weighing about 145. There's no way one woman, petite woman, was going to be able to drag this body, by
Yeah.
herself. So
Yeah.
there's no way she could have done it alone if she did it. And there's a lot of things that point to her possibly not even doing it at all. But
Right.
in the end, it didn't happen the way the state said it did. That's for sure.
Mhm. You seem like a very jovial guy. You're a happy
I
guy. You have a
I
good
try to
life.
be.
Yeah,
I
and you have a
try to be.
nice family that supports you, and you're living the life. Yet you've devoted your entire life to these dark things. I was a musician playing music, and then I worked in television. I edited television shows. Whoop-de-doo. No one died. There was no talk of anything bad happening. How have you remained to be such a jovial, happy guy when you've dealt with all these dark images your whole life?
You know, when I was a competent detective, I saw a lot of things. I saw a lot of bad things. I saw bodies cut up. I mean, I've seen a lot of bad things, and I thought back then that I could either let this affect me and become cold, protect myself against these things, and probably become cold. But if I became cold at work with these things, then I would probably be cold at home with my children, my wife, my brothers, and my sisters. And I didn't want that. So I allowed myself to stay emotional about everything. And I think that's what helped. I think it really helped me out. I think it made me a better person. It gives me a good sense of humor. I mean, I probably have that stupid cop sense of humor where we joke about things we shouldn't joke about sometimes. And but that's what keeps us sane. It really does. When you see a lot of bad things, you gotta you gotta find a way to smile.
I think it's wonderful. I'm really glad you did that. I'm going to make another reference to a television show that my wife happens to really like. It's Blue Bloods, and that's kind of what it makes me think of.
I hate blue bloods.
Uh, I'm not a big fan, but I can see she really likes it.
A
Yeah.
lot of people do, but I watched it a couple of times in the beginning, and it just isn't real enough for me. It's just not like Law and Order. You could watch. You know, that's that's pretty close to being real. And
Mm.
like you said before, sometimes they really touch on some real cases. And Law and Order is good. Blue Bloods is just, to me, it's all made up. I mean, if you know anything about New York City and the police department, the commissioner doesn't wear a uniform; he wears a suit.
Oh, okay.
And and if they can't even get that right, then what else are they getting right?
Okay.
Or getting wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't watch it.
Yeah. I think just women like Tom Selleck. That's all.
Yeah, I know, I know, I know.
Yeah. So when did you write, or when did you and CK, is it CK Lawrence? Yeah. When did
Yeah.
the two of you write Killer Camp?
Uh, we probably started with that book maybe 6 to 8 months ago. We wrote it fairly fast. We've only been doing this less than 2 years, and we have 3 books. And I think they're pretty good books. I'm not saying they're great books. I think they're pretty good books. And like I said, they're based on it's true fiction based on true crime, is what I'd like to say.
I think people would appreciate that. So Ricky Burns is the detective,
Right.
and you base it on your character. Are there any other characters in these books that you, without saying who they are, that perhaps you remember in your life and you say, I remember that person and I'm gonna emulate them in my book somehow. Have you done that?
Well, the lawyer is a real lawyer, and his secretary is a real person. But every once in a while, I'll bring in, say, a friend of mine. I brought a friend of mine, um, without naming him, into Oh Baby. I brought him into Oh Baby and made him a character in Oh Baby.
Okay.
And so I try to stay. If we come up with a scene or something like that, I try to reach back and include people that I know, and I think it helps make it realer. Because I'm talking about something real that happened, even though it's not the same person. But I'm thinking of a friend of mine or an old associate. I'm thinking about what they did, or maybe what another detective, and I'm bringing it together.
Hmm.
You know, and with Oh Baby, I did that a couple of times. with a couple of people because we were talking about different detectives, and in that book, Ricky Burns had to travel to another state, and they started going. He's talking to a retired cop in another state, and they're going back and forth, giving different cop stories, different things that they did as a cop, and so, but the stories were real stories,
Hmm.
except the other guy wasn't a real person. He was a made up person for the book, but
Right.
the stories were real.
Yeah. What was the editing process like for you when you sent out the manuscript that you and CK wrote? And I imagine she did most of the bulk of the writing, and you just were telling stories. And when you, well, not just, but of course the stories, it comes from you. But when the editor came back and made changes, how did that feel like for you?
you know, I didn't mind. I've been told I've been wrong all my life. So somebody else telling me, can you make this better? Can you do this again? I didn't mind that at all because in
Sure.
the end, we want to put out a good product.
Absolutely. And
And
you're,
and I'll tell you what, we work pretty hard on the editing part. We really do. And that's probably the most important part, right?
it is. Yeah.
And so I know with Oh Baby, we wrote that twice. Killer Camp, we basically wrote that twice,
Hmm.
and both times it ended up much better than the first time we wrote
Yep.
it.
Yep. It can be frustrating sometimes, but in the end, if
But
it
it's
always,
constructive criticism,
it
right?
is. Yeah.
It's not somebody saying, "Hey, you're an idiot. Can you do this?" Or,
No,
you know what I mean?
sure.
It's constructive criticism.
Right. Were some of those criticisms about the story, or were they about grammar and the use of language, which would be more of CK's specialty, whereas your specialty is coming up with the story idea?
Oh, well, it was a. They wanted. Could you make the story better? Could you get? Could you have this character more involved? And
Okay.
can you, different things like that? Could you give us more of a background here?
Hmm.
And the only problem is with the writing. I think is CK puts in a lot of commas, and the publisher doesn't like a lot of commas.
Right. I've heard
And
that.
but CK is a fantastic writer, and like I said, she was a school teacher, so I'm pretty sure she knows where a comma belongs.
Oh,
And
exactly.
but so a lot of times it's just, can you get deeper into the story, or
Mhm.
can you build this character a little bit more,
Yeah.
And as far as the language, in the book, it's funny. I don't curse. I just never did for the most part. And when I was a cop or a detective, I probably did once in a while because I had to get down to a certain level with certain people. But I don't curse in my real life. I don't curse. And so in the book, there's cursing. People curse. I mean, it's crime. It's criminals. They curse,
Yeah.
right? But in the book, Ricky don't curse.
Right.
Yeah, Ricky don't curse. And sometimes the other characters will make fun of him for not cursing.
Hmm.
You know.
Well, that leads me to a question. What age group would this be okay to read? Because, cursing in and of itself isn't, maybe a 10-year-old shouldn't read it, but would a teenager or a young adult enjoy this?
I think high
Yeah.
school and above. Yeah, I would say,
Yeah.
let's just say a junior in high school. I won't
Okay.
say a freshman or a sophomore,
Sure.
but we're talking about crime. We're not talking about the best people in life, and but there's not a lot. There's not a lot of cursing, not a lot at all, and it's just something we don't do. I
Hmm.
always figured you could say whatever you're going to say, you could probably say it better without cursing.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And so that's just me. That's
Yeah.
just me. But that's not everybody, and that's not characters in a crime book.
Right. Right.
Characters in a crime book, they're gonna tend to curse once in a while.
Yeah.
Gonna say a
What are
bad
you gonna
word.
do? Exactly. Okay, so what's the length of say Killer Camp? Well, how many pages would you say that is? I didn't get a
You
chance to
know,
check.
I can tell you right now.
All right,
I got it right here.
there it is.
I got it right here, and it's just a little over 200 pages.
Okay,
I thought it was more. I was gonna
that's a
lie.
oh,
So
that's a good size.
it's easy reading books, and I think people like us our books. Everybody, we get a lot of 5-star reviews,
Good, good.
and nobody's ever really said anything bad about the books. Everybody says it keeps their interest, and it's not taking them, say, a week, 2 weeks to read. They could pick it up today and finish it tomorrow if
They
they
could,
want to.
of
It's a
course.
good book to read on the beach. Maybe not up in Canada, but it's a good book to read on
Oh,
the
we have
beach.
beaches here too. We have summer coming up. We're recording this in April of 2024, and you'll be able to have this a link to this edit within 24 hours of after finishing talking here, and you'll be able to promote that. And summer's coming up. The summer read list is a big thing in with people. They're on vacation and they're wondering what
Right.
book to take. So maybe this is a good book to take on your summer vacation.
I think it is. I
All
think it
right.
is.
All right. Now, you mentioned you're getting some five-star reviews. What are sales like for you for these three books, this series so far? Okay.
you know,
Mhm.
I, I heard of sales, but what are sales? I've heard, is that a thing you put on a boat, a sail? Because we're not really knocking them dead,
No.
and I don't understand it. CK's books, other books have sold better than these, and so maybe it's me. I don't know,
Mm.
but you know, we always wish that you can't make people buy. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah.
So we could put the book out there like with this. We could put the book out there. That doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it.
Yeah, sure.
So but we hope. I always hope that somebody will. And like I said, they're real cases, and if you like crime, there's no reason not to buy these books.
Sure. I think it's a popular genre that some people just love and just eat it up.
Yeah,
So, do you do any book signings?
I've done only a couple at a local bookstore,
Yeah.
in my neighborhood here,
Some
and
people some people travel around the country and spend a lot of money flying around and going and doing things like that. Has that crossed your mind to do something like that?
I don't mind traveling. I don't know if I'm gonna. I mean, if the book's not making a lot of money, I don't want to spend a lot of money.
Sure. Yeah.
And so if people want to buy my book, I'll travel. But I
Okay.
but I no, I thought of doing stuff like that, and I think we want to broaden our horizons in the area where we live right now, and hit the stores and do different things to put the names of the book, to get it out there. The Ricky Burns Mysteries, try to get it out there a little bit more than it's out there now.
Well, I like the name Ricky Burns. That just flows off the tongue real easy. Ricky
You
Burns
know,
sounds like a real person. Like I
Ricky
can relate
Ricky
to them.
Burns is a real guy.
Oh,
And he was, when I was in sixth grade, he was my basketball coach.
oh, I see.
And
How
then
clever.
when I would go away upstate, I grew up in the city, Manhattan, Bronx, but we would go to the Catskills in the summertime, and I
Hmm.
played on the Smallwood Sluggers is what it's called, and it was a softball, for like kids like 16 and under or whatever.
Yeah.
And Ricky Burns, he would go up there too, and he would coach the Smallwood Sluggers. So Ricky Burns, he was a big part of my life, and I just like that name,
Hmm.
especially for something, something. There's a couple of times in the book where they call me Ricky, but another name for Ricky is Richard, and another name for Richard is Dick. So
Okay.
every once in a while, somebody will say, "Okay, Dick," and not
Okay.
in a complimentary way, by the way,
Yeah. Right.
not
Right.
complimentary.
Right.
So that's why we got the Ricky Burns,
All right.
thing going on,
Really
and I
cool.
like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
I like it too. I like it too. So do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's rickyburnsmysteries.com. You can see all three books now. All right. There's a link on there for Amazon where you could buy the book. Click on the link and you could buy a book. The books aren't expensive, maybe 15, 16, $17. I don't know what that is in Canada,
Well, it's probably
but
like $30 here, I guess.
but but they're not expensive. But rickyburnsmysteries.com, and there's ways where you can people can contact us if they want, and order the books if they want.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. You're having a good time doing this, I can tell.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I never, I call myself an old hairbag cop. I say a shoe bag, detective. Where you get out there. I'm an old fashioned guy. Today they got all these, electronics and DNA. We didn't have DNA when I was a detective. And so, I'm an old guy. I like to knock on doors. And that's what, even now, when I investigate cases, I do it that way. I get out of the house, get out of the office, I knock on doors, I talk to people. And
Mhm.
writing the book, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to.
Okay.
And it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Now you say you're working on the a fourth in the series right now. How deep are you in that?
We just we're just a few thousand words into it right now, and we're not very deep, and it has to do with I had a guy who was accused of murder several years ago, and so it's based loosely on that case, but we're bringing in a different case where we're going to tie the two cases together,
Okay.
and it's going to be it has to this one has to do with a serial murder. We're bringing in that, and where the guy that I defended several years ago is, for murder. They may be looking at him for that, and it's gonna have some good twists and turns. It
Oh,
really is. We have a lot of good ideas as we're writing it, and we just gotta. The hard thing, we talk about everything. CK and I, we talk about everything. Nothing goes on paper unless the two of us agree with it.
okay.
And like I said, I sit there, I play with the dog while she does the typing, and then we go back and forth with what was said, and then we change it. Sometimes we change it a few times until we're
Sure.
both happy, until we're both happy with what it was written.
Okay. Well, you seem to have a very good relationship with her. My question is, how is this affecting her own writing? Does she is she giving up writing her stuff in the meantime while working with you, or does she do
Yes,
both? Okay.
yeah. Right now, she's just doing this.
Oh, okay. She must
So
really enjoy it.
until she kicks me to the curb,
Yeah.
and then she'll go back to doing her own.
Yeah. Oh, well,
She
that
wouldn't
can't
be the
happen.
first woman to kick me to the
That's
curb.
right. That's right. All right. What I'm doing with this season is just before we wrap it up, I put you in a full frame, and I'd like to hear your best pitch as to why people should buy Killer Camp specifically, or any of the mystery series.
I'll give it a shot.
All right.
The reason why I think people should buy Killer Camp is because, as I said before, it's a true crime story, but it's fictionalized, but it's true crime. And in Killer Camp, what I didn't mention, Dateline followed that when it was
Wonderful. I think you're going to sell a few books just on that alone. Okay, well, Jerry, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I really like this genre. I've also spoke to last season. I had someone just similar to you, but in Washington State, an ex-cop, an investigator, and these are fascinating stories. They're really up my alley, and I welcome you back to this show once you get that fourth book out. I would love to have you back on as a guest. Okay, well, thank you. So are you. It's been great talking to you. You take care now. Bye bye. Thank you for watching. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment. You can also subscribe and ring that bell because I release 2 episodes per week, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays. And if you are an author, I would love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.